Hey folks, welcome to the K8s-Infra meeting. We are July 31, and as usual, this meeting is under the code of conduct, so please behave well. Two things before we start. Do we have a note taker? Can we have a note taker, please?
One sec. I'm following up on some of the scale stuff.
I can try to take the note for other stuff, but it will be hard to keep for my topic.
Okay, I will switch with you when it's your subject. Okay, so let's say also folks, don't forget to put your name in the attendee list. And do we have new people interested to introduce themselves, either in the call or in Zoom chat?
I want to introduce myself. I keep joining this. I'm a new person to Kubernetes. I'm trying to join and learn from you all the experts in this field. You can ignore me. I'm just going to listen and follow along. Try to catch as much as I can. Learn from you guys. Thank you very much. And Dims was the one who actually invited or basically introduced me to the Slack channels. Thank you very much, Dims. I really appreciate it.
Okay, welcome. Anyone else? Okay, so I think we can start with the billing review. I will start with GCP. We have a stable trend of resource consumption. I don't see anything new, but I do have a question, an indirect question to Ben about traffic redirect coming from kgci.io.
It's delayed. There are complications. The second way, my understanding is that what we had before is still in place, and the thing that just ramps all requests statistically is still in place, but it's not ramping anywhere near as quickly as we would have wanted to ramp back.
Okay, I was because I know on Slack we talk about this, and there was like it's supposed to happen. I was curious about either did we see cost improvement, those kind of things. So that's
no, because it didn't stay ramped high enough long enough to make a noticeable difference yet.
Okay.
I've been circling back to it's getting pretty far back in Slack. There's like a thread where I said I'd post updates, and I've been periodically pinging that one, but it's getting kind of lost now. There aren't any since my last update that I know about.
Okay, I don't see. Yeah. Okay.
It's not much traffic at the moment. It's not much additional traffic at the moment. Non-zero, but not enough to easily read into versus other noise.
Okay. I don't see any change in GCP cost for the last month. So wait, let me write this better. So I think we can go with AWS +1, -1. Any question?
Yeah, I think
regarding
that's
GCP?
fine. We rolled out some changes to GCP that probably aren't going to like have the potential to, but I think probably won't actually adjust anything. I'm not super concerned about where this one is at the moment, other than I want to point out that our annualized spend rate is quite high, like something like 86-87% of the budget. And it's not enough that we should be like panicking, but we should be keeping an eye on that, and we should still look to see if we can redistribute. It makes me nervous to be operating close to budgets. And we're really close on the GCP budget. I think every other kind of resources we have were in much better shape, not anywhere near the
okay.
Capacity.
We are close to budget. I mean, based on this dashboard, we're close to budget because we don't have the discount apply here.
Well, no, I mean so Caleb's been posting the weekly ones and I believe switched to using the cloud console. And
because we didn't pass the half of the budget for this year. We
I'm
didn't
not
pass.
talking sorry, I'm not talking about the spend for this year or running out this year. I'm talking about if you take on any given week when we take a look at this, we compute what would 52 weeks look like, which is like a very rough estimate because we do fluctuate week to week, but it gives you some idea. If you look at that number, we are, we're at a pretty high burn rate.
Yeah, but I would say post migration we might need to revisit this because we're gonna have the control plane with us, so that's gonna increase.
That's the control plane's really not going to be a very noticeable cost. There's not a huge amount of resources for that. But as we finish job migration and we kind of get a really good idea what is everything minus the release bucket, like fully migrating the community, even that's going to be a little bit less because we're going to have a few more things onboarding, like maybe VSpray later or some like we had a request from Cube Spray, but we weren't sure yet with all this going on. As we move forward, we should probably be looking at how can we keep all of the budgets like at a more, I don't know, 80% and down or something like that. So we haven't had a big shift, but just like the slow trend is now that we are spending at something like 2.6 out of 3 annually, which is starting to get pretty high.
As a forecast.
Yeah, as a forecast of like
okay.
Like this is what the annualized running rate looks like. And we have that in the weekly posted comments in our Slack.
I think we're good. Come back to the conversation post prior migration. So
yeah, I'm not saying to do anything right now, just something to like keep in mind as we're discussing the budget, and like maybe post prior migration we're looking at how can we reallocate things, and then after that's done, are we feeling comfortable on all of them? And if we're not, then we look at where can we reduce or get more resources, though we have a lot.
We have Azure now.
That's true. We aren't using a build cluster on Azure yet. That's one opportunity.
And then the Oracle one is still there, even if we haven't activated it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
I mean, I think we have options. That's what I'm saying. Post migration, we have options we can explore, not necessarily for this year, but trying to basically make sure for 2025 we have a
I would say
a correct run rate. Yeah,
where it's just it hasn't been that long.
A second, please. Ben, is that saying $210,000?
We shouldn't be using this. We should be looking at Cloud Console.
Cloud Console says 156.
Because we never got around to correcting this for the discount. No one's had bandwidth for that. And we have Cloud Console, and we don't have the equivalent of this dashboard for any of our other vendors. We just have the reports from Caleb. So to me, this dashboard was a nice idea, but it doesn't seem like something we're prepared to actually replicate for all of them. And like there's a really good page for this built into GCP that we can just use if we're just sharing it in the call anyhow.
Well, the idea of this dashboard is to basically be able to have like public dashboard regarding cost. That's the main idea.
Yeah, but it's not that different because you still have to join the Google group and have an account to access it. And you can do that to access the billing page. And we don't even have that for any of the other vendors. Like we don't have it for Fastly, we don't have it for Amazon, we don't have it for Azure, we don't have we just have the reports from Caleb. So I don't want to prioritize putting a bunch of paid in this. We can manage with Google Groups and IAM granting access to that page, similar to how we're granting access to this. I'm not sure if we have a group and a role specifically set up for that yet.
I can arrange it. It's quite
But again, we
straightforward.
also don't have that on the other ones. And what we can do is, I mean, we can just pull it up here right now, the same as we do for Amazon.
Okay, so
I think we
don't
should
know.
deprecate this out unless we're actually planning to build this across all of the vendors, because otherwise it's just another thing to maintain that doesn't. It's not really that helpful.
Can we have an issue for this? Like if we are willing to deprecate those local studio dashboard and basically use console, that means we need to set up a role. I think there's like built-in role to basically read only view on the building. So I think, can we track this somewhere?
We do also, we have a role that's meant to let you have view access on everything, but the role custom role stuff is messed up and is confusing. Bash from Aaron, that no one has context on anymore. And there's a problem where the like infra viewer role grants you access to like some logs and things that you shouldn't have access to, like the registry logs.
Okay.
That are kind of problematic because PII, and I couldn't. I went down a rabbit hole of trying to get the custom roles thing to work to be able to make the changes, and I couldn't get the dueling to work. And that has an open issue. I think that's probably the best thing to fix, because if we fix that, then you don't just have access to the billing, you can also kind of like browse what infra we have deployed. It mostly works. We exclude things like secrets already, but it has some gaps. We really probably want to be able to revoke at least log access to a couple projects where we're really likely to have things that we don't want to just, like, for example, the Prow deployment is also another place where there's just too much risk that we're going to log like the Prow GitHub auth token or something. We should not grant random people access to view those logs. It's not worth it. If we could fix that, then we could let people view what infra we have running and the bills, because we do have a role for this. It's just flawed currently.
Okay. So we can have
I'll
an
link the
extent.
issue.
Yeah, okay.
I have to ask, are we 100% sure that the Slack reports that we are receiving are updated? Because I know there were some problems, but I'm not sure that they are solved, because the number didn't really change as far as I know. It stayed pretty much the same, and that's kind of wrong.
This page is wrong. This page does not
No,
factor for the discounts.
I am talking about the reports from Caleb.
Oh, I mean, we can compare them to Cloud Console ourselves to double
I
check.
believe Caleb was crunching something from BigQuery, which is what this is based on, and those numbers are not correct either.
We had a discussion and I thought they changed, but I mean, we can very easily compare the last comment to the Cloud Console.
Yeah, because I remember that there were some discussion, but I actually don't remember that there were action. But I also went on vacation, so I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, I think let's move on about this subject. My question will be, if we feel like this is something that's need fixed or deprecation or removal, we should have an issue tracking this and be clear about exactly what we want. Because it's okay to deprecate this, but I think also beyond that, we need to be able to say that we don't introduce a regression because we still want the community to access this information. That's why I'm asking for an issue.
That okay, but I think I don't know. I don't really think it is, because we never got it for any of the other platforms, and we've primarily done this by discussing it in the call. I haven't actually seen anybody open up this page and then reach out about it.
I saw people reach out on Twitter about this. That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm saying. It's like we should whether or not it's a regression, we shouldn't talk about this thing. And
okay,
it would be great if we talk on an issue.
I'm filing an issue in K8s.io.
Thank you. Okay, anyways. K8s got some kind of an increase because we are done with the job migration. Yes, we're done with the job migration, so we've seen an increase in July. I think there's still gonna be cost increase regarding K8s because we need to flip the usage of we need to stop using the CMCF account for the ETO tests. So because currently we migrate the proud job, but those proud jobs still runs against the CNCF account. So I think posts. I will talk to them probably tomorrow about this on when we want to do this. Is it post pro? Is it post CI migration? Is it before? I would talk to them about this and see what we can do. Other than that, I don't see anything suspicious.
Yeah, the CI cluster has a bit uptick in the cost, like, I don't know, 10K. But that's kind of as expected because I believe that we migrated a lot of jobs, and we are later on going to talk about the optimization, and we also had the broken cluster autoscaler for a while. So it all contributed to this, but yeah, it's a bit up, and I guess at this point we have just to be aware of it.
Wasn't the autoscaler breakage causing us to not scale up? So if
Not
anything, spend
scale
would be
down.
lower.
Actually, it was the other way because after we fixed it, it broke again with a higher number of instances and never scaled them down.
Got it.
So yeah. It should
Okay.
eventually, hopefully, like, yeah, be okay, but it's still upper.
If the reports in Slack are right, our annualized spend is still closer to like 2/3 there. So we should be okay. On Amazon, that is, overall.
Any question regarding AWS? Okay, we don't have access to Azure for the billing. So if we want information about current Azure billing expense, reach out to CNCF and specifically Chief about this. So they're still working on that to make it happen. It's an internal process inside LFIT. I don't have detail about this, so I think we have to be patient about this. Hopefully, we're gonna get that this year. The thing is, the question is like, do we need access to Azure billing as K8s-Infra lead and TL? Okay, yes, okay.
Someone aside from the CNCF needs to have access so that when we see that the billing is getting out of control, we can start finding out why. At the very least, even if we aren't looking at it regularly, we want to know that someone who will respond quickly in the project has access and can tell us that. I mean, even if it was like a couple of sub leads from like Microsoft working on Azure for us or something, we don't want to rely on having to ping Gphy in between everything he's doing for the whole CNCF to help us figure out where the spend is going when it's out of control.
Yeah, agree with you, Ben. The other thing also is we need to make sure that Caleb can generate the same stats that he is generating for the weekly fund.
That also includes DigitalOcean. We don't have near as much on there, but we do have jobs using it. And Caleb has the same problem there where even Caleb doing the weekly reports for us cannot tell us what the spend is.
Understood.
Yeah. I think the rule apply for any cloud provider who use Fastly, DigitalOcean, Oracle, those kind of things. So that like because it's like That's what I'm saying. We have to be patient until pushing or gently push CNCF to provide us access. I don't see a technical broker. I think it's just like all of these go under the backlog of
Yeah,
things
but
they
we
need
got
to
to
take
keep
care of.
following up there. Like, I don't realistically expect that you, me, Dims, or Mohammed actually have time to be deeply involved in all of the clouds all the time. But it's important that we have multiple tiers of people that have access so that when something comes up, we can find someone with access to sort these things out. And that definitely includes billing. So we can look at, oh no, we're like spending too much. How do we get a handle on this? We know it's bound to happen. The entropy is towards spending more over time, and eventually that's too much, and we need to be able to figure out where it's going and why and mitigate it. We aren't there yet, but it's bound to happen.
That's why I want to put the emphasis on patient and kindness. So we gently and patiently push to make it happen.
Absolutely, but we've got to keep following up on that one, because that gap is going to bite us eventually.
Okay. Anything else? Anything new we need to know about AWS? I had something about AWS, but I forgot, so I might drop something on Slack. Other than that, I think we're done with billing review. I can do fastly if anyone is interested. There's like nothing much to share. Or we skip to the main item.
Oh, we can skip, I think. Oh no.
Okay. So open discussion, basically 2 items from me. First thing is like CFP for maintenance track submit, waiting for response from CNCF. So I think that's just the TLDR of this. And there's like the CFP from contributor summit open. So anyone interested to submit something, please apply for it. We might do, workshop, just like open conversation about a specific subject. Anything might be interesting. And that's it for me, except any question? Okay, Marco, you next.
Yes, am I muted or not? Okay, I'm on mute. That's good. The has Prow build cluster. As you know from the Slack, or if you don't, we have finished the Carpenter migration. So we have got rid of cluster autoscaler. Like it's still there, but scaled to 0, and like everything, the autoscaling group and so on is at 0 as well. And we are exclusively using Carpenter. Basically, the Carpenter at the moment is running in the same configuration as a cluster autoscaler. So we are using the same instance stuff, which is R5AD4X large, like quite beefy one. It's working pretty well, I think. I really didn't notice anything wrong or any reports or really anything like that. Which is great success, and I would like to take a moment to thanks especially to the AWS folks who helped a lot and provided a lot of very useful feedback that we will discuss today, and also thanks to Corey from Kubernetes for driving this forward and making sure that we migrate. So it finally happened. And yeah, the AWS folks provided some let's say guidelines, because Carpenter is much more than cluster autoscaler. It has many different features. It can, because the cluster autoscaler, when we used it, like there was a disclaimer in it that you shouldn't mix and match the instance types. Like you should use the same instance type for all autoscaling groups. and it didn't really support mixing like different architectures or anything like that. And on the other side, Carpenter can do that. Like it can use different instance type. It can use like also ARM instances. It can really do a lot of different stuff. And we could use to reduce the costs because in reality, when I take a look at jobs, as for example, I have been trying to play with the reports and trying to figure out like how we do at the moment and stuff like that. I figured out that we don't really use the resources that are provided by our instance type. Because we have, let me just double check at the moment so that I don't say something wrong, but the R584X large is 16V CPUs and 128 gigabytes of RAM. And like the largest job eventually has 69 gigabytes of RAM, and it's not even used half of that. So we could definitely add in smaller instance types that would be much cheaper than the instance types that we have right now. And that would provide us significant savings. And I pretty much like thought of 6 layers of this. Like the first layer would be using the non-optimized instance type. Like at the moment, we use the optimized instance type, which is memory optimized. So it comes with a lot of memory, which we don't really use. The first step would be to add the non-optimized instance. So we can keep for some time optimized instances and also add non-optimized, like the general purpose, and let's see how everything is going to work. And that already should help because AWS Carpenter is going to pick the cheapest instance type it can. It has idea about the prices and everything, and that should already give some results, maybe not very significant, but given the amount of work that's needed, it is very simple. Like create a PR just to add the new instance type to the list. It's like low risk, but it has some benefits. Yeah, Ben.
I'm actually a little bit concerned about this kind of change because one of the problems we have is job authors need to understand what they're trying to schedule to, like how many cores are available, what's the ratio of cores to RAM, and what architecture. Those all impact when I'm like authoring and maintaining a job. If we start to, I think switching to machine types makes sense and documenting it. But if we start to go in the direction of like using multiple architectures or using multiple different sizes or something like that is going to get much more confusing than the situation we have right now where we just have two targets, one for the GKE cluster and one for the EKS cluster. I don't think that we're prepared for that, and it's a little bit unusual in that most of the people writing these don't have direct access and they're not writing a normal pod like deployment or something and like continuously observing it. I also think that a lot of the jobs basically take advantage of what were available. So like in some cases we might do things like memory backing more things if we were confident that we have it. So that's something to keep in mind. We want to find the way to run things as quickly as possible without leaving unutilized resources. So, like, for example, if we're running Go unit test and we can get it to use more cores, there's probably an inflection point on some high number of cores where it stops scaling well and doesn't help us. But below that, it should be the most cost-effective thing when we also factor in for developer time to just throw everything at it. I think that we should alter the memory ratio to be lower, but when we do, we need to be a little bit careful about what the jobs are configured for. And I think at some point we should settle on something we think is reasonable and add some pre-submit to test infra that actually catches. What are you doing? You're allocating way off from the ratio that the machines provide, or something like that. Or you're trying to ask for more resources than we can actually schedule to this cluster or that sort of thing. Because it's been something we run into pretty often. I hit it yesterday. I asked for too many cores. I think we need to keep that in mind, and that when we continue to iterate on the machine types, it makes it a moving target for um actually optimizing your job config to make sure that you're taking advantage of the CI. If we're changing the machine type, we're changing the architecture, we're changing the core and memory ratio, that sort of thing. It sounds like for the core memory ratio, we probably don't have the right set right now, and most jobs aren't going to take care of that. But when we do change it, we need to make sure people know. We need to keep an eye on pods becoming unschedulable because they're doing this wrong. And once we, sorry.
Right, flakes as well, Ben. The flake rate might change, and you have to hunt down which machine type the flake rates are more than others, kind of thing. So we'll need additional information when we are looking at test grid or other places where
I also really think we should look at the jobs that are running on the GKE cluster and what they allocate, because most of those should be possible to move back and forth, and that should give us some idea. And hopefully what we can eventually do is come up with, we think CI jobs need high memory, we think CI jobs need standard memory or something like that, and pick some pretty comparable machine types so that it's easier for us as K8s-Infra to just move jobs between clusters without having to affect the job authors with, well, this is a wildly different machine type. We should be able to get something fairly similar between them in terms of like CPU memory ratio, number of cores, that sort of thing. They're not going to be identical, but
I was thinking about that, Ben, and then I realized that one thing that, like, as humans, right? Like, so we always say, think about like, okay, let me pick the biggest one because I know it's going to work there, right? Like, and we never go down from there. So there is a thing we need to figure out, like how to balance out, right? Like, so if we end up with enough metrics to show that you are within a band, then you can fit the job, right? Like, and then we have enough data to move it down with enough confidence, so to say. I think that was something that we need to think about. I have two more things that I wanted to mention here. One is spot instances, Marco. That is another option that Carpenter opens up, right? And the other one is Graviton. We haven't talked about other non-Intel architectures, kind of thing. So that is another thing that we can think about in terms of cost reduction.
I really think we should do architecture modeled as another cluster. I mean, even technically, it doesn't necessarily have to be another cluster. It can be another namespace or something with a different node pool or something like that. But from the job author perspective, I think that the cluster field should indicate if you're going to be scheduling to ARM or not. There's too many places where if I got scheduled to a different architecture by surprise, that would not
Agreed.
go
So
well.
essentially what we are saying is the job authors, pro job authors, should provide a hint that we'll then use to schedule it to target different clusters, essentially at that point.
I have a few comments I want to add to that as well. So a few months ago, I tried to upgrade the GKE nodes, right? We're using GKE instance class that's like 8 years old. It's not that performant. We noticed the performance uplift when we moved 2 generations for the what was it, the scale test, right? Everybody saw some great numbers in the control plane, right? And we're probably going to see some really good numbers in all our CI jobs. If you move away from VMs that are backed by 10-year-old CPUs to like the latest and the greatest instances that Google and AWS are handing out that are like a year old, right? The reason we can't quite do that is because our assumptions around job sizing ain't right. So it would be nice if the project offered a combination of CPU memory architecture options to our contributors. And that's it. That's all that goes. And if you're doing something custom, then you should mark your job in a particular way. And for the bulk of the jobs that pick a VM size that fits, we can guarantee that they're going to run on modern hardware. And you'll see incremental improvements over the years.
I think we couldn't do that for CI because we needed local SSD, and that was a really significant
We
performance
could
concern
fix
for a lot of
that.
things.
We were able to fix that, but we had to adjust the machine size. And it didn't quite fit with the current one.
I want to underline my overall point is that whatever we wind up doing with this, we should try to make it relatively consistent and not something we're changing often, and we should document it. And then further, we should probably be extending the test-infra pre-submits to catch, oh, I see you're scheduling to this cluster, but I know that this cluster only has machines this big and you can't get this many cores because right now that's very hard to review. Authors don't know what's available. I don't necessarily remember what's available. And then we wind up after we create the job finding out that like it doesn't schedule reliably or something. We should be able to catch that, but it's hard with this moving target. So I think we should figure out like what we think is going to work well for like machine shapes and stuff. And then we need to kind of commit to them a little bit because there are a lot of places in our CI where we need to do things like I'm going to run a local etcd and API server and I'm going to stomp all of the IO. I need exclusive access to the host machine and I need to know how big it is. And it's been a little bit of a moving target and it's error prone. And I also see people doing things like creating jobs that get because they're trying to be conservative with memory and they're scheduling like 4 cores and 1 gig of memory. And that doesn't make sense for the machines that we're providing, but they don't know because there's no visibility as a job author into what it's running on. We should be able to iterate down that in the future, but one of the things we can do is creating like a new scheduling target in Prow, like a new cluster or something as far as the jobs are concerned that says, hey, you want to start using like some different type? Great, we have it now. Versus if we keep iterating on like the default pool and the existing clusters, then we're going to keep finding that we broke someone and we don't even know because there's too many jobs to keep track of.
So can I ask you a slightly different question, Ben, which is, can we have like a minimum threshold for the instance type and let Carpenter pick, so anything above that is okay, right?
Yeah, I think maybe if we could tell it, can we tell it like specific ones that we think are fine? Because then we could do things like multiples of the machine size.
Right. Yes. So if we have like 3 or 4 options there, and like we can say this is the minimum one, that should be enough for now, right? Like, and then we can.
I think, we would almost need to separate out then the handful of jobs that are doing something like I'm building and testing Kubernetes from source and running kind, and no, I really want the whole machine. Because it's about IO, not actually the fact that we can't schedule for IO. Really, Dims, we should fix like you should be able to schedule for IO and Kubernetes. Let's just go solve that problem. That sounds easy, right?
Kept.
But we have done like multiple node pools that are tagged or something like that in the past on GK8s-Infra and tried some things, and we should figure out some of that. But I think we have like kind of 2 cases. There's you want to know what's the shape, the ratio between the memory and cores so that you can avoid under allocating memory, but also not excessively allocate memory. And we have the I need the whole machine because I'm just gonna go as fast as I can and use all the IO.
So I guess for now, Marco, if we can pick like 3 or 4 that are very close to each other and let the Carpenter choose from those based on like availability in the region and cost and whatever, plus throw in spot instances for the same instance types, I think that might give us like a starting point for now. Does that help?
Yeah.
I don't recommend spot instances in the general pool, because that's gonna wreck any of the periodic scripts.
Yeah, that's the
That being
thing
said,
that I
though,
also wanted.
the alternate I would like to take is for jobs that care about that, they should use node selectors, and for everybody else, you can use spot, right? Especially pre-submits.
Not really, because this is very risky in a way that you can communicate it, but we have a very good track record of people missing the communications. and then their stuff is going to just stand up as spot instances. And this is going to be very problematic for the stuff using the cloud resources. You don't want something spawning, I don't know, 50 nodes, and then you just, their node is away, like there's no node anymore. You don't want that.
That's why I was hoping we could model this by saying these are different clusters as far as Prow is concerned, so that you can start opting jobs into scheduling to a new cluster that like experimentally has Graviton instances or something like that. We have the same thing on GKE. We're not using AMD machine types or the ARM machine types. I forget what they're called, but there's some ARM machine type there too. But we wouldn't want to like throw that in the default cluster and just use node selectors because it's too high of a risk that like between us and all of the many job authors out there that we miss things and that they're silently broken, and then that can cause like knock-on effects. But if we make it available as, hey, you have to add something to your Proud job to start doing this, so we could do it with like taints and
Yeah,
tolerations.
someone was working on that PR, but it got abandoned. I might resurrect that and finish it. Enable taints in Prow, and it will solve the problem really well because we can create these awkward node
you only
pools
need
and leave them tainted.
You just need tolerations in the pod spec, which should already be there.
Yeah,
you would need to make sure that the node pools are tainted.
Yeah.
But I think that the least error prone, clearest way to do this, as long as it doesn't have too much overhead for us, is to just say, this is the cluster where we're doing like wild new machine types, and you migrate between clusters. I think job authors understand that it's fairly straightforward to audit and edit.
Yeah.
And it's opt-in. And we know it's opt-in. Prow isn't going to like surprise schedule you to a different cluster.
So yeah, I want to quickly, because we have 7 minutes left, I want to quickly answer to some of the concerns because I had pretty much the same concerns actually. And speaking of that, we can start with using different instance types. Like we can even use the lower instance type. Like the Carpenter works in a way that it is going to see what you schedule, and then if you're going to automatically get the instance that uses the type that's needed by your job. And I don't see that actually affecting the performance, because even if you use smaller instance types, you will actually much easier end up in a situation that your job is only one of the instance, and it might now be more performant than if it was an instance with several other jobs. So there's actually that benefit too, maybe benefit, maybe concern, but there's something to keep in mind. Like I would initially pick the instance type that's not optimized, like leave the one that we have right now for folks that want to use a lot of memory. Pick the same instance type that uses that's not optimized, so it will be still 4x large. It will be with 16 vCPUs, but not as much as memory, because in reality, jobs really don't need that much memory that we have in the memory optimized instance. That really shouldn't be like any change if you get scheduled and more or another. Like the only difference is you have less memory that you're not anyways going to use. Then what we have, but where we have to be careful, is to throw in the smaller instance type, like to go to 2x large. Good enough, because even a lot of jobs are not using more than 8 or 7 vCPUs. So like a lot of jobs would fit on that. Where we have to be careful is that those 2x large instances might have slower disks. Like the IOPS that we get in 4x large is larger than IOPS that you would get in 2x large. It's not a big difference. But what I wanted to discuss is that before doing such change, we should figure out how much IOPS do we need. And for that, I would like to fiddle with the monitoring that we already have to see, for example, if we can get that data from Node Exporter, or if there is any other tool that which we can use to get how many IOPS do we need. Because this is still SSD, this is still a lot of IOPS. It's smaller, but it's still quite good.
It's
You
possible
can use
things have changed, but I spent a lot of time looking at what the GK clusters that we had, and basically we have jobs that either aren't terribly IO heavy, or we have jobs that will use 100% of IO available all the way up to we're directly passing through a local SSD and they're still using all of the IO on the physical device. And that, like, you can never give them enough IO. Like when we're running a kind cluster with that CD that's pretty busy, it's just going to use as much as we can throw at it with currently available hardware. But those jobs don't have to move. I think the one question that didn't come up here though is if you move to smaller machine types, we avoided that in the past with the infra under the assumption that you pay a certain amount of overhead just to run kubelet and the system daemons and stuff, and that generally doesn't scale. That generally scales in your favor with larger machine types because like kubelet has a certain minimum amount of resource intensiveness that doesn't really go up with having big machines. Like having a few more active pods doesn't really cost much CPU or memory, but just having kubelet, having the kube proxy does cost something. So that might be something to look at. I'm not sure what the ratio is currently, but at some, when you go to the limit to like 1 core or something, you start to not actually have real schedulable resources. And we need to keep that in mind throughout, that like the size of the machine is not the size that's available to the jobs.
Right. Yeah,
You're right.
So to answer Marco's question, like please go experiment with adding whatever you need for trying to get the IOPS information. It'll be useful for later for other things. So if we are able to do that, +1.
So we are running out of the time, but one thing that's concerning to me is that I don't really see a good solution to that is tracking the flakiness rate of jobs. Like where I start to be concerned, like we can experiment with a lot of different things, but we don't really have a way, or at least not a way that I know, that we can confirm if everything is fine. So not sure if folks have some idea about that or if anything can be done.
Nothing perfect. If you go to product.k8s.io, there's a flame graph at the top, and you can, if you've been looking at that, you can see a pretty obvious change in the flame graph when we've made really bad changes in the past. It's been a long time since we've done that, but like we have detected things there before. Clayton actually added that for that reason. OpenShift was having the same kind of issues. We also have go.k8s.io/triage, and that can give you some idea about flakiness. The problem is that we have lots of other things that introduce flakiness, so finding broad trends is hard. And I would just be careful that I see that we have things like, I don't know, the scale tests where a couple people are out for a little bit, nobody's monitoring it, and then it's possible that we've introduced other regressions while we broke something with the infra, and then you really dig a hole there. It's just not feasible at this point for us to keep an eye on all of the CI, but we still want to avoid being responsible for it. I think something like changing to have less memory available, though, the thing that I would mostly be looking for is like jobs not scheduling. Like when we change the auto scaling behavior, that's the main failure we get into, is the auto scaler got kind of stuck and or like there's a job that's not sized to fit on the machine. And that you can go look at all jobs in the error state. You can also filter by cluster on the proud page, and that includes that flame graph at the top, so you can get a little bit less noisy information by excluding the jobs that are running on the clusters you didn't touch. There's nothing perfect, and I don't think there ever will be. There's just way too many factors in the system.
Yeah, I will quickly just say that with memory, it's not really a concern about scheduling, because as long as we don't drop the instance type that we use right now, and I don't plan on doing that at the moment, it will be always possible to schedule what we have right now. So as long as we just add, like relax the filter that we are using for instance types, we are all good there. The other thing that I have very quickly concern, do we want to communicate such changes? Like, do we want to send them somewhere? Of course, post to SIG K8s-Infra, but do we want like to do any more official communications?
No, I don't think so. We don't have anything specific, right? Like we are iterating. When we are iterating, there is not much to send like periodically, like, we're just going to confuse stuff. Already people don't read our stuff. If we send them more, they are less likely to read important stuff.
Yeah, that's my concern as well. Okay.
Yeah. Just comment somewhere in SIG K8s-Infra so people who are really curious have a place where they can find it if they're looking, but we don't want to put out a call to action. When we are done iterating, we should put some docs alongside the Pro job config that tell you a bit more about, what you can actually expect to do with your pods, what resources are available.
What clusters
Oh,
are
that's for
available?
sure.
So specifically, right? Like what clusters are available, what hints you can provide in your job, things like that, I think will be useful for later, but not right now.
Yeah, we're not there yet, but
Yeah.
I'm going to be following up at some point through SIG testing on just writing some more guidelines for them. So probably by the time we're done iterating with this, we'll have a place where we have some more guidelines about the Prow jobs, and we can add the information about like what sort of resources are available.
Yeah, plus one on that.
Is it possible to have an issue for this? Also, is it possible to have like the CloudWatch dashboard collecting all the information from the IO consumption?
I will have to check about the IO consumption, and for the issue, yes, definitely.
Yeah, because I feel like we could basically like currently, because I think you have a concern about general purpose instance type. So we could like try to compare if we have information we can collect and put that somewhere, because currently it's
Yeah.
not easy to expose metrics.
Yeah.
Like if we can put that in an issue and see what's happening, because I know in the past we had like GCP monitoring dashboard to collect IO consumption over the brew cluster, but it was never public because of reasons. But I think we should try to do the same on AWS and see what's look like over time.
I gotta run, folks, but I have a really strong suggestion for this I want to drop, and then I'll let you all continue. I create another cluster entry in Prow that's where you're playing with machine types, set a couple of jobs to use that, and then you can actually see if there's a performance degradation. And then worst case, you can literally just go look at the VMs. This is something that we've done in the past. We did it with node pool taint tolerations, but I think the best way to do it is to have like a preview cluster that we opt a few jobs into and try migrating them and watch those jobs and say, this is a representative like Go unit test or something. Did it actually see a performance drop, or is everything fine? And that will probably give you the best confidence. I think trying to track all the IO across the whole cluster and then correlate it to jobs, and it's a lot of work, and it's still not going to give you as much confidence as just knowing certain jobs are definitely doing this and they give you a sample on how's it going. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, bye. So one last thing I wanted to say, Marco, was there is a person called Harish Kuna, Kuna. So he's helping out a lot with the SIG scalability stuff recently. So you can talk to him more about like the IO stuff and whatever, monitoring EC2 instances and whatnot. He'll be very helpful.
Okay. Sounds good. Also, one thing that I would like to figure out, final thing, is we should check what IOPS we have by GKE. So if we are around that level, even if it's less than it was used on AVS before, I believe we should be fine as well. So there's that too.
I think it's kind of risky to define a baseline using GK, because the thing is you don't. I think currently we don't have the same set of Prow job, and over time we might just migrate everything to EKS or Azure over time, because currently, we don't have the same type of instance type. We don't have the same configuration when it's come to disk, local disk. So you might be not. I think using GK as a baseline is risky. Yeah, because we will never have the same level of project running between both clusters.
So I mean, it can be the same. The disk itself probably different, so there is that too.
Yeah, but you will never get the same IO. That's the problem, because like the that's a really small detail. Like the local disk size on GK is completely different on EKS. It's not the same, and you cannot define that. You can even define. I think currently on GK, you cannot define the IOPS per machine, which is possible on EKS. That's what I'm saying. It's going to be, I would say, like Ben said, have like different node pools. You can like define toleration and taints, so you can schedule a specific job and see the difference between the different instance type, and that give you a better baseline for IOPS configuration.
Yeah, if you can use taints and, sorry, not taints, but tolerations and node selectors, I guess that should be fine.
Yeah.
I gotta go. Bye.
Yeah.
Okay. See you folks.
See you,
Bye-bye.
folks. Bye-bye.
Bye.